Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third class in the junk mail houses with me, Jess Graff. Again, I'm an artist and educator, and I work in all sorts of different materials. Today, we're going to be adding to our houses that we've been building, and also think about making our houses a little bit stronger. First thing you should definitely do is gather up your materials again. Remember, it's helpful to have things like tape or glue sticks, something that's sticky that's going to help those papers stick together. If you've got both, great. If you have something else that'll work, maybe glue dots or maybe school glue, that would also be great. Also having some junk mail. So whatever kinds of junk mail you have, maybe you've got some that are already open, maybe you've got some that are still closed. You might also have old magazines or little tiny bottle caps, all sorts of different things that normally you might think of as trash, but we're going to be building with again today. So find some of those things and I'll start talking about what we're going to be doing to make our houses a little bit stronger. So we'll take a look at the paper I've got from before over here. We've got those two pieces that are there. And also, as a reminder, always be kind to yourself in these processes. As you're building, you might discover that things aren't working out the way that you thought. And that's okay. That's just part of building. So be kind to yourself. Remember that deep breath in and deep breath out if you're finding yourself getting a little frustrated or overwhelmed. And you can just take your time and try again. No problem. These are just junk mail, pieces of paper or little pieces of garbage normally. So we can always experiment, we can try again. So last time, or the first time, we did this connecting of these pieces. You remember how we connected that little bottom part here? We made sure that all those little flaps were connected. You can see it's got a little bit of a gap there, but still pretty well stuck down. We also made sure those flaps were stuck down, whether we were using our tape or our school glue, our glue sticks or glue dots. And we also made sure that we were sticking the outside flap too. So this flap is still a little bit loose. I'm going to make sure that I stick that down. That's going to help our houses be a little bit stronger. So you're going to make sure you grab another piece of that junk mail, another one of those envelopes. Remembering that when you're opening that envelope, you want to do so a little bit gently as you peel those parts apart from each other. If you have some little pieces that rip, you have some little tears, that's okay, no big deal. You can also cut those off. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off for myself here. Once you've got a tear like that, it's more likely to tear again. So if you've got a little tear like that, you can either put a little piece of tape to keep it from tearing some more, or since this is just on that flap, that top of the envelope, I'm just going to cut that off. We don't need that. If you like the way those little flaps look at the top, you can leave those there too. Up to you. Cutting all the way along that folded line. See, no problem. There we go. So if you want to make your house a little bit stronger, you can find those flaps again, figure out which is your wall. I'm going to use this as the wall since it's got those nice windows. And I'm going to use that as the floor since it's kind of flat. And I can go ahead and crisscross those flaps. So I have to decide which flaps are on the inside and which flaps are on the outside. I can try it a couple ways. I can say, do I like it better like this? Or do I like it better like that? Up to you. I think I like it better like this on mine. So that's the way I'm going to link mine up. I can also decide which one of those floor pieces is going on the top. So I think I actually like the sort of light blue on the top here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So you can see I'm getting, even if my envelopes don't match, I'm kind of getting interesting colors and getting interesting patterns, those different shades of blue intersecting with each other. So now I want to stick those flaps together. Adding this third wall is going to start making this even stronger. So right now it's really flippy floppy, strongest at that joint where we've connected things. So we're going to go ahead and add that third wall. Now again, you can use whatever kinds of sticky tool you have, whether that's a glue stick or tape. I'm going to go ahead and use a glue stick today. I used some other things last time, I think, so let's take a look. So I've got my glue stick here, and I'm going to remember, let's see, I want this one on the inside, I want this one on the outside. So I'm just going to put glue right here on that flap. I don't need to push super hard if I'm using something like a glue stick. I just need to get a nice even coat of glue all the way along there. Yeah. If I want to make sure I've gotten this flap too, I can just do a little tiny bit more right over that fold. You see how we've got that fold, and I just put the tiniest bit of glue on this side of the fold too. Not a huge amount. I'm not pushing so hard that I'm getting those chunks of glue coming off. Also, always important when you use your glue, make sure you get your cap back on there. And if you've got a little gap, make sure you clip that on there. That way your glue won't dry out as fast. That's helpful. That's good for markers too. All right, and folding that up and pinching those pieces together. Now, I pinch from both sides if I'm using something like a glue, whether I'm using that school glue or I'm using something like those glue sticks. I pinch from both sides because that way I'm not smooshing it over. If I'm just pushing from one side, it's going to kind of smash it, kind of smoosh it over. So I'm just going to go a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, making sure that both of those are really stuck down, both of those tabs, the inside one and the outside one. Okay, so now that I've got those tabs, I still don't have the floor done yet. So I'm going to rotate that so I can get to it a little bit more easily. And I'm going to go ahead and get some glue on there too, because right now it can kind of move around and fold. And maybe you like that. Maybe you have an idea that really helps to be able to move that around. Or maybe you have an idea for a different shape of room, a room that's not square or a rectangular shape. And that's fine too. But for today, I'm just going to go ahead and keep my sort of square or rectangular room. And to help that be stronger, I'm going to want to put my sticky material on the inside there. So let's see. Maybe I'll use that glue stick again. Remember, if you're using something like a school glue or a glue stick, that it's going to take longer for it to dry. And until it dries, it's going to be a little bit weaker. Okay, so here we go. You can do this a couple of ways. I'm going to fold mine up a little bit or hold it up a little bit. Maybe open it up a little bit. And I'm going to put that glue all the way back. See how I'm doing that? It kind of moves around a little bit, but that's okay. No big deal. Getting that glue right where it's going to overlap. Right where it's going to overlap. Nice and even. Really go into the outside edge here of this piece. It's going to help it stick together. Again, making sure I get my glue stick cap all the way back on there. Or if you're using school glue, make sure you close that up too. If you're using tape, that also works great. And if you're using tape, you can always just put your pieces of tape flat across. You could put the tape on the bottom part if that's an easier spot for you to get to. Whatever works for you, no problem. Let's see, getting in the right spot, because remember that glue is going to dry there. There we go. So already that's starting to make it a little bit stronger because we now have another joint, and those joints, those sort of where those three walls meet, or that floor and the side walls meet, that's our strongest point because we've got the most points of contact there. So it's a little bit less floppy than it was. If you're noticing that your house is still pretty floppy, that's where adding things like other pieces of paper or little bits of cardboard could help a lot. So you notice I'm kind of building here on a little piece of cardboard. You could do that too. That creates a better base for your house, so it's not so floppy like this. I really like using things like cardboard from cereal boxes or snack boxes. Those work really well, and they're really nice to cut with scissors too. So they're great for making all sorts of different things with. This is just the back piece that was on a sketchbook. So I use the cardboard from sketchbooks a lot too. Once I'm done using the paper inside of it, you can use whatever you've got, whatever kind of cardboard you've got, whatever kind of nice hard surface you've got. is great for creating a base. You could glue that down to that base if you want. That would make it even stronger, or you can leave them separate. It's up to you and whatever's going to work for the space that you're in the house that you're building. If you've got little pieces of cardboard, you might even want to create some pieces that go up, some pieces that strengthen those other flaps too. Or if you've got things like interesting pieces of paper, you might be able to cut those interesting pieces of paper out. Maybe I want to make something like a wall decoration, a tile decoration on one of these walls. As long as it goes all the way to the floor, it's going to help make that stronger. So I could cut this out and I could glue this to this wall and that would make it a little bit stronger. I can decorate that way too. I can also add to the floor. Again, we did that, we were talking about that a little bit before, but I've got lots of papers that I've used for different things and that I'm done with using for the purposes they were made for. So I might choose to add some things to the floor to really strengthen that room too. Lots and lots and lots of options. You can even, if you like, make a fourth wall. So you could take another piece of your junk mail envelope, just like we had, and you could add that to the front here, just connecting those flaps, just like we've been doing with the other walls. Having those 4 walls is even stronger than having those 3 walls. So up to you. All right, we're going to go ahead and for now move on to decorating our house. So we'll get a different house in here that I worked on a little bit more. So this is that one that we looked at that first week. And you can see I've started to add some things to it. So let's take a look. All right. You might remember those tiny, tiny little framed pieces of art that I was making in the second class. And I just went ahead and used a tiny, tiny little glue dot. You could use a glue stick, or you could use a piece of tape to connect those to the walls too. As long as they're really light, it won't make your wall cave in. You don't want to put anything too heavy up on the top of your wall because it'll sort of flop it over. But as long as they're light, it'll be just fine. So again, double check your flaps too. I didn't connect this flap very well, so I can just do that now. And again, use whatever sticking material you have. So for this one, I'm going to use tape. And I'm just going to smooth that on. If it's not perfect, that's okay. No problem. Again, being kind to yourself. Supporting it from both sides as you're pushing that tape on really makes a difference too. All right, so we've got those 2 pieces of art. I also decided to make sort of a little wall shelf there. And that's just a piece of that folded paper. So that's just a piece of my junk mail. So if I've got a piece of paper like this, and I want to make something like a little shelf for myself, I can do that really, really easily. Just taking that shelf, and I can fold it. I can fold it to the height that I'd like. As you're building more things for your house, you might discover that you want to try some different techniques. You want to try folding in addition to cutting. So to make something like this, all I did was make folds like that. That's pretty easy, right? 1 fold, 2 fold. So it's just that little piece folded a couple times. And then if I wanted to, I could just glue that or tape that right to my wall, and I'd have a little countertop. Great for something like a kitchen or a dining room or any other room that you can think of, really. I've also got some other furniture that I've been working on that I can show you too as I'm decorating. I made a tiny little book too. You can read through that tiny little book. I've got that little tiny mirror that we were looking at before. And I've got some other things. You can make anything. You really, really can. So this little table I'm going to put in here is just made from pieces of junk mail rolled up. So I just rolled that up. So if I have something like a piece of junk mail like this, all I would need to do is just start rolling. Do you see how I folded that around? I'll do that again. I just pinched it around, started rolling, rolling, rolling. So it starts making a little tube. It starts making a little tube all the way down. And I could just tape that. That's just what those legs are made out of. And also, again, that's the tabletop is just made out of junk mail and little tiny bits of cardboard from snack boxes. So I think this might have been a Cheez-Its box. And maybe a little bit of like junk mail paper. Fold it over, you can see the bits of the junk mail blue there. So I can put my little table wherever I like it. I might decide to move it around a lot. I also decided to put a little piece of magazine here as sort of a big art splash, an artwork on the wall. Up to you. We've got some little chairs too. Again, these chairs are made out of snack boxes. So you can see these had some little cookies or crackers. And they're just little pieces cut and shaped. You can fold, you can crinkle your materials. Up to you. So I've got some little chairs. What else do I have? I've been making lots of different things here. Oh, how about a little cup of tea or a little cup of cocoa? And another one. So tiny. Maybe some breakfast. Get a little croissant over here. Why not? So these ones, if you can see how those tiny croissants are, those again are just pieces of snack box. Just pieces of that Cheez-It box cut out with scissors. So you can see that was the inside, that's the outside, and just rolled over. So you can make little tiny bits of food for yourself. You could make little people, whatever is interesting to you. And you can keep rearranging things. You might decide that you don't really like the way you arranged it the first time, or things need to be moved to be more aesthetic for you. Up to you. You are the designer, so you get to make those choices. Yeah, so take a look at that. I might also see what else I can find. I had started that bookshelf before. That was a piece that we had started before. Pieces like this, pieces that are bigger and have that stronger cardboard, are also really good for reinforcing things like the walls. So I still have some work to do on that one, but you can see I might decide to put that over here when it's done. And that can really help us because it's going to help sort of support that wall. That can help support that wall. You can choose to have that be a piece that moves around. You could choose to sort of tape that to your wall if you feel like your wall really needs some reinforcing. Up to you. You get to be the designer on this. You can also make all sorts of things like you can make doors, you could make curtains, you can build so many things. You are the artist, you are the creator, so you get to kind of figure out what's going to work for you. Don't be afraid to start collecting things that are interesting. So I've got a pile of pieces here that I don't know if I'll use on this house or if I'll use on a different house, but I just started collecting little bits that were interesting to me. So I've got different textures that I'm cutting out of magazines. I've got things like other pieces of junk mail that I might want to use. And I'm just sort of collecting those things so that I can build and I can give myself options. I might have a little piece of artwork. So I made a little frame there. I cut out a little picture and then I cut out some sort of wood looking material just out of something like, this was a piece of old magazine that I didn't need to keep anymore. So I saved this piece because I think this is a really beautiful stone. I might want to turn that into something like a countertop or a plate at some point. Maybe, I don't know yet. But I can give myself those options by collecting the things that I'm interested in. And you can do the same thing. You might try different things. You might say, oh, well, maybe I don't like that there. I could try something else there instead. Up to you. So many possibilities. And your creativity can really help you out there. Try using things on the floors. Try using things on the walls. Again, use those things that are near you, whatever those things are. Maybe you've got things like bottle caps. And next class, we'll be looking at things like how to make things like plants. Things like how to add those plants to the spaces inside of your house, or even you could start building outside of the buildings or the houses that you're making too. You might decide to make a whole garden. It's up to you. You are creative and you can figure it out. And remember, it's okay to experiment, to explore, to try new things, to have things not work out. Just keep trying. One last thing I want to show you before we are at an end today is if I want to make something like a book. If I want to make something like my tiny little book here, the tiniest little book, it's got these little pages in it. I'm going to need so many books to fill up my bookshelf eventually once my bookshelf is finished. So that's really simple. You can even make that out of those tiny little scraps. Remember how I cut this off of the top of that other envelope at the beginning of this class? So if I want to make something like a book, all I need to do is cut a really long strip of paper. Can you see how I'm doing that? Cutting that long strip of paper. Cutting that long strip of paper. And then maybe I'll make that even smoother. Maybe I like when those pages are really crisp. You see me cutting that out there. And then I can do what's called a zigzag fold, or that's one name for it, where I go folding one way, folding the next way. See how I'm doing that? And then back the other way again. And back the other way again. So it's just back and forth. So it's kind of making a little spring. And back the other way again. And then I've got a little sort of tail here, a little extra spot that I can cut off. And now I'm most of the way to having a little book, right? I've got some little pages. I'm going to use tape for this, but I can take just the tiniest little bit of tape, tiny little bit of tape, and add tape to the end, making sure that it gets all those little folds. It's kind of hard to see that, but those tiny little pieces of tape. If I've got extra little bits of tape on the end, I can leave them or I can cut them off. Up to you. Again, you're the artist. You get to make the choices about your piece. And you might try a couple different ways. Maybe you have a different thing that's really interesting to you. Again, I love books, so books are one of the things that I wanted to make sure that any room I'm building will have, but maybe you have a different idea. All right, so we've got most of the way to a book there. If I wanted to, I could also separate these little pages where the folds are. So I could just do a tiny little snip here on the end. And those little pieces fly. But now I've got another little book. So there you go. You get to decide what your buildings have. Just keep making, keep playing, keep experimenting. Remember to be kind to yourself. Again, next time we'll be looking at things like plants. And just remember that you can build as much as you like. Remember to breathe on in and breathe on out if you start getting frustrated. It's okay to try things over and over. It's okay to try something and then say, I'd like to build something else. That's okay too. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you're having a great time and I hope you keep building. We'll see you next time for that fourth and final class.